She didn't do it.
This would be Wednesday, January 15th. We'll go through and finish our Fable notes and then get into our Fable reasons for today. Alright.
Guys, he's talking.
Oh, sure, don't worry. I'll be mean to them if need be. So we start off with our background information about Fables. Agent? Go for it, that's fine. With our background information about Fables, we have the Fable that's been around the longest period of time so far. Liv's saying is?
Traditional.
Nice. So that's the traditional one, and we'll take some looks at some examples of those today. Then we came up with a new way of writing them. And Ryan, what was the new Fable they came out with? It's written differently. It is written as a poem. It does start with a V. Correct?
First.
Nicely done. And that was the first Fable, which was written out as a poem. And then the newest of all the Fable types, Jack, is? Modern. And Heron, how's the modern one written?
With animals. I mean, with, like, animals going to school and, like, getting on the computer.
There you go. Using all the today-y stuff and things like that. And then for any Fable to work, it turns out that there is something that every Fable has to have at the end. And Joey, what do they have to have at the end?
Moral.
Moral. And Matt Bratt, what is a moral?
A lesson.
Nice one. It's the lesson learned that makes us a better person. And then we went through and talked about the characteristics of Fables. And there's 5 things that you have to make a Fable a Fable. The first most important one, Lake, is what does every Fable have to end with?
A lesson.
Nice done. It has to end with the lesson or the moral. Then, from there, Castro, what kind of characters do we have in a Fable? Animals, because that's what kids enjoy. If they pay attention to it, it makes life fun. And then from there, Blunt. How long should Fables be for kids to pay attention to them?
Short.
Nice done. If you go on too long, kids will tune you out. And then 4 would be the Gerhard. What type of tone should Fables have to make you learn best? Because we have to figure out where your learning molecules are located. You have to activate them. Nicely done. So they have to be humorous, funny, to try to make you smile in some way. And then the last one is on there, Thrash. At what age are Fables aimed at? Nice one. People of all ages, because you're never too old to be.
Can I do the animal ones?
Then we talked about the person that made Fables famous, that's been around for the longest period of time, an agent who is the father of Fables. Aesop. Roughly, when did Aesop live? And we're going to try and nail it down. Davies?
It's like BC time.
Works for me. I also have taken a long time ago.
600
and then
BC.
he wasn't from around here, Lexi Lewis. What continent was he from originally? It does start with an A, you're correct. It was very large and just below Europe, you're correct. It does end in Africa, you're right. Hey, nice to know, Lexi Lewis, that he started off in Africa. We don't know exactly what country he was from there. But then he didn't spend all of his time there, Lexi Lewis. Eventually he was kidnapped and taken as a slave back to what country? And then eventually had to spend his time in Greece, but started off in Africa. Was really good at storytelling and told all these stories all throughout Greece, until eventually he managed to work his way up through the little storytelling thing, Lolo. And so who did he tell the stories to?
The Emperor.
Nicely done. Eventually he was able to tell his stories to the Emperor. Got so good at telling his stories and telling stories to the Emperor, he was able to achieve the one thing that all slaves want. And what is the thing that slaves want? Flake?
Freedom.
Freedom. And even though he was free in telling all these stories, we find out what important thing about these stories that he's famous for telling all this time. Schultz?
They're being repeated from other stories.
And what do we call that when you repeat other people's stories and don't give them credit?
Plagiarism.
Nicely done. The fact that he was a plagiarist and stole all of these stories from other people because he was a hater. And then he dies a really fun death. And Matt Bratt, how does he go about dying?
He gets ripped apart.
Ripped apart. Why is he ripped apart?
Because he threw the gold in the lake.
Threw gold in the lake, and he gets torn into little tiny pieces, and that makes him sad. Well, actually, it makes him dead.
Because the people hated him because they wanted the gold.
Now, he's no longer with us, and he has suffered a bad case of death. But we still have his stories to this day. Even though the people he told the stories to were illiterate. And what we call this magic method of getting the stories to us today? Baker?
Oral tradition.
Nicely done. That's the oral tradition. And what is oral tradition? Agent?
Where the story gets passed down by telling it to someone.
Nicely done. Passing down the story from generation to
Unwritten
generation
story.
where it's not written down. And then, from the oral tradition, we find out since our fables are not very long, if we still want to be able to pass this information along, we don't have time for exposition, which is the boring beginning stuff that we have. So we have to introduce these characters that people are familiar with. And what do we call these things? Christy?
Animals.
No. Starts with an M?
Mammals.
No. That is similar, though. I'll give you that one. Frash?
Motifs.
Motif, nice one. Or a motif. And a motif is not what hillbillies ask for Christmas. The motif is sort of like a stereotype for animals. It is the same character popping up in the same thing. I had kids yesterday saying, is it like a stereotype? It is like a stereotype. If you're still trying to figure out the hillbilly thing, because hillbillies don't have a lot of teeth.
Oh, motif.
I know. I'm slinging some high-level jokes at you out there. So.
Mustache thing.
What?
That's a mustache.
And with our motifs, we'll see how well you guys can work together as we go through. As an example, an owl together. What is the owl known for?
Smart.
Wise.
Wise, smart, intelligent. If we want bully, mean, or
A
tough,
bull.
Lion.
Lion. Tiger.
Wolf.
Bear.
Bear.
Nicely done.
Woo!
Now,
Turtle.
you have to wait till I get done talking before you guys start talking, or it doesn't work. I know, you're excited to learn, like, learning! But still, hold your learning in check for a moment. If we have a sneaky, thief, or tricky one?
Snake.
Raccoon.
Raccoon.
Fox.
Fox.
Snake.
Not a snake.
What's it called? Weasel.
Weasel. The reason not a snake is because snakes did not become thought of as evil until Christianity. These predate Christianity. It was around before even that Jesus guy was around.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve and the Garden of Evil. That was the first time, Garden of Eden, sorry, where the evil came in. That was the first time the snake was thought evil.
Eat the apple and then.
Now.
Good memory.
Ooh. Elephant.
Elephant.
Ow.
Even though they have
No.
Rabbit or cheetah.
Fast.
There you go.
Quick. Yeah. Oh, I got the second one.
Slow.
Tortoise. Turtle.
Tortoise. Sloth.
Snail.
Snail.
a turtle.
Slug.
Turtle.
One is
Turtle.
actually truly
Dumb.
slow.
Cow.
Cow.
I'm a baller at this.
Messy or sloth?
Pig.
Good job. Hungry.
Jack.
Shy or quiet?
Deer.
Deer. Cat.
Squirrel.
And the last one, talking about going.
Hunter.
Can we get to this one?
Yeah.
It's a type of bird and a type of dog.
Oh,
Parrot.
cockatoo.
And
Parrot.
chihuahua.
And it's a hua hua. Now, with the handout, put it to the side, because it's only if you really need it. For the most part, we'll be able to go off of the information. That'll be it here to help you out.
Oh, what was
What
that?
was that?
Nothing, just random things.
Oh
We're
gosh.
dealing with animals. It was a
It's so
animal
cute.
picture.
Picture
We'll go through, take a look at reading these. Then I'm going to have you figure out motif, and then also the type of fable. So this one's called The Tortoise and the Hare, following our motifs. What do we know about the tortoise?
Traditional.
Fast.
He's slow. What do we know about the hare?
Fast. Quick.
Fast and quick. As far as the type of fable, even though we haven't read it yet, there's a good chance you can figure out what type of fable it is by how it's written. And what type of fable would this be?
Traditional.
Modern.
No, the animal one. Verse.
Let's have you guys vote to find
Motif.
out if I'm not. Raise your hand if you think it's traditional.
Oh,
Raise your hand. Okay, traditional.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you say modern.
my boy tradition.
Raise your hand if you say verse.
He's not voting.
Raise your hand if you're confused about everything. That's very hard.
Definitely.
Well then, we'll read the fable and then come back and see which of you guys are correct. Except for you who are just confused. You can't be correct. You have, oh, and this was written by one of my past students, so the rhyming is going to be creative.
Oh, I know what it is.
Oh, I know that.
There was a hare just hopping by. Right then the tortoise caught his eye. He said, "Hi, tortoise, how are you? I bet I'm faster than you." The tortoise said, "Oh no, contraire, I'm much faster than a hare." The hare said, "Fine, we'll take a test. I'll show you I'm the very best." They stood behind the starting line. while the hare thought, "This race is mine." Bang! That was the gun. "Now go!" The hare took off and stubbed his toe. "Oh well, who cares? He is too fast." He knew the tortoise would be last. He tripped and skipped along the track, but he could not stop looking back. The tortoise was not anywhere. He was too slow for the hare. As he finished, he could see something standing by the tree. It was the tortoise. He had won. The tortoise said, "That race was fun." Then he laughed in the hare's face. I left off the last line, which is the moral. You guys remember what the moral is?
Slow and steady
wins the race.
Slow and steady wins the race. Now that we've gotten done, raise your hand if you say traditional. Raise your hand if you say modern. Raise your hand if you say verse. Why do you think it's verse?
Because it's poem
Done.
Because
Good job.
how does the turtle walk?
And so it's right. Why would you sit on top of your desk when you such good questions?
The tortoise teleported.
Alright, the ant and the grasshopper.
Oh, I like
Let's
that.
look at this one.
Pennsylvania.
Now, motifs. Do ant or the grasshopper follow our motifs?
Yes.
No.
Not yet. Now, ant is one that we just haven't touched on yet, but ants technically do have a motif.
Yes.
And they'll show up sometimes. The ant motif is hardworking,
Strong.
industrious, strong, stuff like that.
Brain,
And
just
so
like the
they'll
ant
pop
in
up that way.
McDonald's.
The grasshopper does pop up sometimes too. And the grasshopper, because it plays music with its legs, you have a little outlet. If you're ever out in summertime, the little
Annoying.
oftentimes it can be a cricket too. They have the same thing. But they do the idea of goofing off, playing around, and stuff like that. And so in this one, you have a hard worker and a goof around. As far as the type of fable, well, we kind of have to wait till we get done with it.
Can we guess
We'll
that
see if you can figure it out.
before we do it?
Alright, so we'll see what we have on this one. The ants were spending a fine winter's day drying grain they had collected in the summertime. A grasshopper, dying of starvation, passed by and eagerly begged for a little food. The ants asked him, "Why did you not store up food during the summer?" He replied, "I didn't have any free time. I passed the day singing songs and relaxing." Then they said in derision, "If you are foolish enough to sing all the summer, you must dance supperless to bed in the winter." And then I left off the final moral. What would be the moral for this? What is it that the grasshopper should have learned? Schultz?
You should always have time to work hard.
Why? How does that apply to it?
Because he just goofed around and relaxed instead of doing getting food for him.
Nicely done. Now, Harry, if I call on you, you can't use the one from there, because that'd be cheating. You have to be able to put it in your own hand. You got that whole thinking thing. Lake,
Don't procrastinate,
how so?
because he was just goofing around all the time, and now it's winter, there's no food to get, so now.
That could work. Jack?
Believing the present changes the future.
How so?
So if you say if he didn't sing and he gathered all the food and he wouldn't need any, he would be set in the winter.
I like it. To connect that to 7th grade life, which we'll do with a lot of these fables, there's a saying that Mr. Butts likes to put over the announcements
Oh
quite a
my
bit.
God, that's what I got
Annoying.
And what is the saying?
You make today will shape your world
It
tomorrow.
applies. That would be a good moral for this too. The choices you make today and for the grasshopper,
Change
same
the world
idea.
tomorrow.
Plan for the day's necessity or use your time wisely.
Why are you not mad?
Yeah?
It could be slow and steady wins the
I know.
race.
How so?
Because the ants took slow and steady and they were trying to get the food. And then the grasshopper came along and he's stupid and he didn't get any.
No, that does not.
Also,
No.
type of fable. Raise your hand if you say traditional.
Yep.
No.
Raise your hand if you say verse.
Oh, really, guys?
Raise your hand if you say modern. Raise your hand if you're still confused on what's going on.
You guys.
Very honest. On this one, is there anything, well, first off, is it written as a poem?
No.
So what's it not going to be?
Verse.
Now, is there anything in here that could not exist thousands of years ago?
Yeah.
No.
No. So what's it going to be?
Well, the word traditional.
Then traditional. There's nothing in there that didn't exist thousands of years ago. Traditional.
No.
Low.
They wouldn't talk like that. They wouldn't go, I passed the day singing songs and relaxing. That doesn't sound like something like old.
No, there has
They did.
Maybe they're
This is
Yeah, they
actually
did.
one of Aesop's fables.
They did.
What?
Roasted.
But they were gonna smash people with heads in the rocks.
Is that in that story?
Now,
No.
this one, the exact same one, the ants and the grasshoppers, but it's a much longer version. How can we have two versions of the same one that comes out with a slightly changed moral? How would that possibly occur, Mark?
Since there was input that he changed it.
And what do we call that process of changing them? Close. That's a two-word thing. You pass them down. They change over time.
Don't pick like.
I know.
Starts with an O. Ends with oral tradition.
Oral tradition?
Nicely done. And so the idea of the oral tradition that people would start off with this one, and then other people add to it and lengthen it and put more into it, and you end up getting a longer one because oral tradition, same fable, just went in two different directions. And this one does have the don't procrastinate at the end of this one. Time for work, time for play, stuff like that. Take a look at another one. The lion and the mouse. First off, motifs.
Ooh.
The lion is going to follow what motif? Officially, it was on our list, but I think you guys can probably place it in there without too many deep issues. Emmanuel? Nicely done. He's going to be the big, strong bully. Also, oftentimes, is the king of the jungle kind of thing. He plays the king role. And the mouse, what does the mouse play? Lake?
Like sneak. No, it's like quiet and shy.
There you go, the quiet, shy one. As far as the type of fable, we'll have to wait till we get done and we'll find out on here. And you're going to have to figure out what the moral is, because I didn't put the moral on there. Once, when a lion was asleep, a little mouse began running up and down on him. This soon woke the lion, who placed his huge paw on top of him and opened his big jaws to swallow him up. "Pardon, O king of the jungle," cried the little mouse. "Forgive me this time. I shall never forget it. Who knows, but I may be able to do you a favor one of these days." The lion was so amused at the idea of the mouse being able to help him that he lifted up his paw and let him go. Some weeks after this, the lion was caught in a trap, and the hunters, who desired to carry him alive to the king, tied him to a tree while they went in search of a wagon to carry him. Just then the little mouse happened to pass by, and seeing the sad condition in which the lion was caught and tied, went up to him and soon gnawed away the ropes that bound the king of the beasts. "Was I not right?" said the little mouse. And what's our moral? I cut the moral off there. What is it we should learn?
Don't eat.
Fresh?
Don't eat people, or they might make you. Yeah, they might help you later.
So don't burn bridges. So don't make people mad if they can help you later. I can see that.
Don't make enemies. Don't eat them.
Joey?
Just because they're small doesn't mean they can't help you.
And how does that apply?
The mouse is small and the lion is big.
Let's see what it is.
I could dig that. Blake?
You really would have a chance.
How so?
Because he could have just like crushed the mouse, but instead he gave him a chance to let him go, like help him.
I can dig that. Nicely done. Aaron?
They might have been like enemies at the beginning, but at the end they became friends.
Nicely done again. And this one went where it's not a person's size that counts, but I dig what you guys came up with also. A joy of a lot of these is you can have multiple morals that all sort of fit the same idea. Oh, type of fable. Now before you vote, keep in your head, is there anything in here that would not have existed like 1,000 years ago? If there's nothing that would have existed 1,000 years ago, then it's traditional. If not, it becomes modern. If it's written as a poem, verse. So raise your hand if you say traditional. Raise your hand if you say modern. Raise your hand if you say verse.
Actually,
Raise your hand if you're still confused.
can I vote for traditional?
You want to go to traditional?
Yeah.
Is there, well, for those of you who go modern, what in here could not exist 1,000 years ago? Yeah?
Wagon.
They had wagons thousands upon
Like
thousands.
rocks.
Well, I don't
None
know.
of King Kings.
I'm now letting you know. Jack?
A rope.
They had rope.
So,
So that would make it
Um,
traditional.
Traditional.
Didn't have hunters.
The
Let's
trap.
take a look at one
I
more.
killed it.
The bad kangaroo. Do kangaroos fit any of the motifs we know?
Yes.
No, they do
Happily.
not. Good job.
they're fast.
They bounce.
They bounce.
they're boxers.
Those are fast kickers.
Fighting.
Digger.
There was a small kangaroo who was bad in school. He put thumbtacks on the teacher's chair. He threw spitballs across the classroom. He set off firecrackers in the lavatory and spread glue on the doorknobs. "Your behavior is impossible," said the school principal. "I'm going to see your parents. I'll tell them what a problem you are." The principal went to visit Mr. and Mrs. Kangaroo, sat down in a living room chair. Ow! Cried the principal. There's a thumbtack in this chair. Yeah, I know, said Mr. Kangaroo. I enjoy putting thumbtacks in chairs. There was suddenly a loud noise from down the hallway. Forgive me, said Mrs. Kangaroo to the principal. The firecrackers that we keep in the medicine chest have just exploded. We love the noise. The principal rushed for... Before I let you leave, what type of fable would this be?
Modern.
How do you know?
Because it's firecrackers.
Tomorrow,
There's
you're going to
fire.
have a quiz, so be ready for it.
There's crackers. Firecrackers.
Other than that, there you go.
Good.